folks. So glad to have you with us here on Lincoln Square, Substack Live right now. You, me, Katie Phang, my friend, and one of the best people on this entire platform for kicking ass, taking names. And today is a day to kick, excuse me, to kick a hell of a lot of ass and take a hell of a lot of names because it looks like the Epstein files have popped up again. And wow, it's not pretty.
It's a doozy. It is a doozy. And Rick, we were just saying before we hit the live button, it's one thing to have these things exist and come out through the Epstein estate, for which I
Right.
express my eternal gratitude because the DOJ ain't doing shit for us.
No.
But the fact that the White House is scrambling to try to convince Republicans to not support this discharge petition, you gotta make it makes you wonder, right? What the hell are they trying to hide, right? This
How
is
bad can
crazy.
these things be
Oh, bad
if
enough,
they've got
apparently.
Pam Bondi and Cash Patel and the White House staff all trying to lobby? Sorry, guys, I got a little bit of thing in my throat today.
Me
All
too.
trying
Me
to
too.
lobby Boebert and Nancy Mace and
Mace.
God knows who else, and having the president call these people. How bad is it if they're on a full court press? I mean, they've never worked this hard on anything in their lives,
Well,
and
remember, they haven't been working for weeks. So it's like,
right,
they've been everybody's just kind of been sitting there like eating shit for a while, including the White House. Let me be very clear. It's
yeah,
not like they've been hustling, right?
yeah. Katie, one of the things that we were talking about it earlier when we were before we came on the air is this is now like black letter stuff. These are emails from Jeffrey Epstein, not
Mm,
friend of a friend, not a rumor of whatever, saying Trump was in the house with this one of the underage victims. Trump
yeah.
was in the house. And one of them saying, "Oh, I don't want to come back to your house and find Trump there again." So suddenly, it feels a lot more like Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's relationship is going to be a lot harder to do the. I barely know the guy. He was a coffee boy. I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, there's no covfefe energy here. And you know what the thing is too, just as a lawyer, what I appreciate is are they gonna make the same allegations they did about the birthday book entry, Rick? Are they gonna say that
Right.
somebody went in a secret time machine back over years over time to be able to fabricate these fucking emails? So
Right.
I'm gonna go with an assumption that these emails are authentic for purposes of our
Mhm.
conversation. And then I'm gonna say, look, as a lawyer, you couldn't ask for better evidence when it's in writing. It's one thing to ask, Rick, do you recall the conversation you had with Jeffrey Epstein back in 2011? It's a whole other thing to whip out a damn email that shows
Right.
the by and between conversation in black and white. When you have evidence like that, it makes it almost impossible, if not impossible, for somebody to negate. Now, look, is there room for interpretation? Sure. I actually have been giving, quote, credit, and I don't use that word very,
Right.
nicely, to Ghislaine Maxwell. Her skill in these emails has been incredibly sphinx like. That's what I've been saying. She doesn't really
Mhm.
directly implicate herself in huge ways, which shows that she's smarter than the average bear, which also
Right.
suggests that Todd Blanche fucked us all over when he went for that 9 hour boondoggle with her because you knew he knew about these emails before
He
he met with her. So he
man,
basically facilitated perjury, is the way that I'm looking at it when he met with her for those
well,
9 hours.
we're seeing these stories the last few days that Ghislaine Maxwell now has a puppy in prison, and she has
Oh.
has the warden helping her fill out her commutation papers, and everybody treats her like she's a goddess. This is on Todd Blanche. He knew this. He was part of a criminal conspiracy here to cover up this material. He is abusing government resources and power. He's suborning perjury. The whole thing just stinks on ice. I got to wonder as we see Grijalva sworn in today,
Mhm.
we're going to end up, I think, in a place where Todd Blanche is going to take a very ugly set of hearings coming next fall, or once the Democrats take the majority. He's going to be on the hot seat, and I don't think he is positioned to survive that
Well, let's not
politically.
just stop with Todd. Let's go with Kash Patel and Pamela Joe. You'll
Yeah.
recall they testified before Congress, stating
Hmm.
there's no there there.
Wait, what
Well, maybe
Epstein
maybe I
file?
didn't look at the entire file, but I there's nothing there. The amount of cover up action that has been done in a proactive sense should
Yeah.
offend anybody to the core. I said this morning with Jim Acosta, I said, look, man, you want to be a part of bullshit tariffs that hurt American working families. You want to sit there and you want to applaud the weaponization of the Department of Justice to prosecute political enemies.
Right.
You want to sit there and do casual racism and be fine with that. That white Christian nationalism and some anti Semitism. You know what? I don't sleep at night, but I guess you do. But what's your fucking red line? Don't you think child
Right.
sex trafficking and child sex predation and child sex abuse should be the red line that you, as any American, should say, regardless of party affiliation? I have to say, this is where it has to stop. So, Republicans, if you're hearing us, which you know they all hate watch us, you
Oh,
know
they do.
that your
They
ass
do.
is on the line because that's the reason why the scramble from the White House is let's not put this up ever for a vote for the full House because
Right.
who wants to be on record to say that they supported keeping the shit in hiding?
And I got to tell you, I don't think Katie that we're going to have at the end of this release of these emails today, more Republicans who are skeptical of this. I think we're going to have fewer. I think you might end up as this percolates through Congress. These emails are damning. This is not good for Trump. This does not look, when Epstein says the dog that didn't bark, when you read that email, you have to make an assumption that he's talking about Trump has knowledge of the situation during Epstein's trial. The dog that didn't bark. He neither flipped and confessed what he knew about Epstein, nor did he change his behavior. The whole thing is just, I mean, I think this is going to end up pissing off a lot of these Republicans who have been taking a lot of heat for Trump right now.
Yeah, and listen, I want to focus on that 2011 email you just talked about that the dog hasn't barked and that's Trump because what you don't see is just as important as what you see. So this is an
Yeah.
email by and between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, right?
Mhm.
April 2nd, 2011, to which Ghislaine Maxwell responds, I have been thinking about that, meaning she's been thinking about how Trump's name hasn't come up. And of course, at the end of Epstein's email, he's like, he's never once been mentioned as in Trump, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. I think it means, Rick, it means I'm 75% there to narc on
Right.
Trump to the police chief. But you
Yep.
know what Ghislaine Maxwell says? She says, I have been thinking about that. A few notes. One, this was set with high importance, meaning they thought it was important
Yep.
enough to flag it. Number
Yep.
two, you know what she doesn't say? She doesn't say, what are you talking about, Jeffrey? Trump was never there. What are you talking about, Jeffrey?
Right.
Trump never did
Donald
anything.
who?
Donald who? Right? None of that is there, which just goes to show there is something there. There is a measure of substance that creates compromise, as I've been calling it, that
Yep.
creates a foundational basis for extortion, blackmail, and other things. We also know Michael Wolff talked to Jeffrey Epstein via email in 2015 about creating a debt or some type of sense of gratitude if he
Hmm.
wins in 2016. I mean, who the hell has conversations about people unless there's something there about which you can hang something over somebody's head? It's pretty obvious. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out.
I'm curious about Michael Wolff's emails back and forth with Epstein in this because he's clearly a guy who talks to everybody all the time. He's
Yeah.
very well sourced. He clearly has more in his quiver on this, and I would encourage Michael to come out and lay it out, brother. Take it out.
There
You
have been
got
people,
you.
yeah, I want to know
Yeah.
what your thoughts are, Rick, because some people have been very critical on social media about the fact that
Mhm.
he's been sitting on this entire time and has not come out with some of this. He's come out with some of it, but obviously not this stuff.
Right. Look, I'm looking at this as we now have this new tranche of documents. If Wolf has material that is relevant to this tranche of documents, um, and again, he talks to everybody. He talks to everybody all the damn time. He spends more time on the phone and emailing people than I do, which is insane. And so I would encourage him to lay more stuff out now. And frankly, we're at the junction right now where if Michael Wolff wants to stop all the BS lawsuits against him from the Trump world and wants to be a damn hero, now's the day, brother.
Yeah, and this morning I had mentioned how he went on the initiative and the offensive to sue Melania for
Mhm.
defamation
Yeah.
concerning that, and that I think it was Ryan Lizza and I were checking with Jim Acosta, and that dude has clocked more than $750,000 in small dollar donations to be able to
Yep.
finance that litigation.
Yep.
So there are enough people that are believing in the cause to be able to do it. I think we've got to see two things happen, Rick. One, I think every American who gives a shit about what is happening here needs to reach out to their members of Congress,
Agreed.
Republicans or Democrats, and say, I need to know what your position is on the Trump Epstein files. Regardless of whether or not you actually see the public vote, I think people need to be putting pressure on their electeds in DC to say how they come down on this issue. And
Yep.
number two, I do think I would tend to agree. I think because under the law, if you were the custodian of these documents, as we've seen the Epstein estate show. There is no court order barring the release of this. Michael Wolff really
That's right.
needs to say, here's the entirety of my communications with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others. And y'all do what you want with it. This is my civic duty as an American hero. Here we go. Because, I mean, hero,
Yeah.
people are pissed. People are mad that he's been sitting on
Oh,
this. And
I've
people are
watched some
like,
of the.
you've seen the criticism, right? People are like,
Oh
you
yeah.
need to provide this information. And look, there's an email in another group of emails that was from Wolff to Epstein on October 29th, 2016. And Rick, you and I both know we were in the
Hmm.
throes on the eve of the presidential election. Subject,
Yep.
now could be the time, importance level high. Quote, there's an opportunity to come forward this week and talk about Trump in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Interested, question mark? Michael Wolff knew something and didn't say
And
anything.
that wasn't Michael Wolff being a journalist there.
No,
That was
it
Michael
was
Wolff
not.
being a player. And look, I like Michael. I like Michael. We get along, but I do think he's in a point right now where this is kind of like that Maggie Haberman vibe. Yeah, you knew all this stuff about Trump and you
Uh,
saved it for the book, is the criticism she gets every single day. Now, I
mm.
can argue that north and south, but in this case, you know, she had coverage about policy shit in the White House. This is coverage about whether the president is a pedophile.
Well,
These
so
are
here,
questions
so do you
that
bring
could
Michael in?
answer.
Do you bring him in then, Rick? If your House oversight, do you bring Michael
Fuck yeah,
Wolff
I
in?
do.
And now do you
Yeah,
ask
I do.
him what was you knew that would quote
Yeah.
help finish him? End quote.
Either
What
it
was
comes
this,
out or
Mr. Wolff?
it's gonna come out one way or the other because this is a weird kind of this is a telltale heart kind of story right now where
Oh, a little
it
Edgar
hasn't
Allan Poe, my
yeah, it
friend.
hasn't gone away. And people kept thinking, and I know a lot of people around the MAGA world thought, oh, it's gonna go away. Trump will bullshit his way through it. Something else will happen. But it has stayed as this constant drumbeat for the last 10 months. It never disappears. It never fades down enough. And the minute anything else calms down, it pops back up. And right now, in some ways, he should have wanted the government shutdown to continue forever.
I said the same thing, man. He is
Did
the
you?
victim of a news
Great
cycle.
minds.
Yeah, I know, man. You and I are simpatico that way. He is the victim of a news cycle that's kind of pumped the brakes a little bit on
Yep.
shutdown and other things, even though those are still obviously very important. And no, the shutdown
Sure.
hasn't ended, people. I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't agree with
Yeah.
that assessment when people say that. It is still happening day in and day out. People still don't have their
People still hurt everywhere.
money. Yeah, people are still hurting. But I will say, it sucks for him. Sucks for him that the news cycle today was, hey, House has to come back and vote. Oh, Grijalva gets sworn in, discharge petition. Oh, and look at the tranche of information that just came out that was released by
Right.
House Oversight. Comer must be getting his ass reamed for
Oh,
this shit right now. Can you
Comer must be.
imagine?
They must be beating Comer 6 ways from Sunday right now.
Holy poopy.
That guy. The one thing you and I both know about Jim Comer, he is not a smart man.
Mm-mm.
He is not a smart man. And so he is now staring in the face of something that I think Pam Bondi and others assured him, no, nothing else is coming out. Don't worry. You can still talk about Hillary's emails or whatever BS you make up,
Oh,
on the spot.
auto pen. Biden's
Auto
auto
pen. Yeah,
pen.
Joe Biden's auto pen.
Yeah.
But I think that I think folks, excuse me, today has been a hell of a day for just for people who look at this and say, am I going to be a party to something truly monstrous? Am I going to be a party to covering up and then to the pardon of Ghislaine Maxwell? That's the
Oh,
other reason they can't release these files, folks, is he needs to pardon her to shut her mouth. If these files come out, he cannot pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. It can't happen. But there's nothing here in my mind that where I don't think there's a clean path out of this now for the House. I think they are. I mean, Grijalva's in. She should have been sworn in by the time we finish this conversation.
should.
Um, and 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 I don't think so far with the reporting I've seen before we came on the air, Nancy Mace has not changed, nor has Boebert. And
And you know, MTG isn't because she's been doing a media
oh no,
tour
MTG is
talking
going to
out.
go and
She's
read
in.
the yeah, that's a whole. We should have a whole nother day on MTG, but I will take the enemy of my enemy right now. You
Oh,
know,
look, listen, the Machiavel inside of me is not above taking
oh,
the help where we can get it. Listen, they're not invited to the Thanksgiving table. Let me be
no,
clear. But
no,
I will grant them the daily grace if they're going to be on the right side of history. For example, Rand Paul voted against on
yeah,
Sunday joining his Republican colleagues in the Senate on that bullshit. So listen, again, give them grace where it's due. I will say this. You know who also needs to be hauled in front of oversight? One of our dear, dear, dear targets, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is in
Absolutely.
text messages in these disclosures. Quote, on June 3rd, 2019, message, can't believe nobody is making you as an Epstein the
Right.
connective tissue. What do you know, Steve Bannon? What do you know,
Hmm.
Steve
I
Bannon?
mean, Steve Bannon also recorded something like 20 hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein. He has like 20 plus hours of videotape with Epstein, and he was counseling Epstein on how to improve his public image and how to get back in good with Donald Trump and all this other stuff. I would really like to understand why the deeply curious group of people who were at the White House that day accepting their special notebooks with Epstein um, didn't. They never seemed to take a look at Brother Bannon, and he was clearly either in business with or using him as a subject for a documentary. Uh, Jeffrey Epstein. I think you're right. That is another player in this mess that I think is going to be top of mind for the House when they come back.
Well, this text message, just to give everybody chronological context, June 3rd, 2019 is on the eve of the July 2019 indictment from the Southern District of New York,
Right.
wherein Jeffrey Epstein finally faced some federal accountability. Because
Hmm.
remember, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alex Acosta, never prosecuted Epstein or co-conspirators. And
Right.
you know who else was facilitating giving Ghislaine Maxwell the pass was Comer again. She was due to be deposed in August of this year by House
Right.
oversight, but because she had a pending petition for writ of cert to the Supreme Court of the United
Mhm.
States on her appeal, they said Comer gave her a pass and said, when the Supreme Court rules on your petition, you'll come back. Oh, honey, that's been done and over with for
It's over
months
now.
now. And she hasn't appeared. And instead, Blanche decided to substitute, thinking he could pull the wool over the Americans' eyes by doing
Yep.
that 9 hour let me braid your hair and drink cocktails moment with her. So there has been a cover up of a massive, massive size.
Huge.
And I just feel like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I don't think that you can push the hypocrisy agenda this far and not have to fucking bite it in the end. And I believe that that's exactly what's going to happen here.
Speaking of the hypocrisy agenda, there was one of these emails that has nothing to do with the underage victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell
Yeah.
and potentially Donald Trump. It was the one email where Epstein said somebody should ask Trump about where he got the money to buy Mar-a-Lago. The unions and a casino that he owned loaned him $30 million to buy Mar-a-Lago. I was told that mortgage fraud is a very bad thing. I was told
Yes,
that
I
mortgage
believe
fraud was one of the
Letitia
crimes of
James.
the century. And I'm curious if Donald Trump has ever been candid about that in any of his federal filings. Which, when you run for president, folks, you have to do these big financial disclosures, and they are complicated and they are thorough, and they go way back all to the dawn of time. So I'm fascinated to see how the DOJ, who are like Johnny on the spot with mortgage fraud cases right now, treats that revelation.
Well, I mean, we had the media reporting yesterday that Bill Pulte was being investigated, right, for how he managed to get those records vis-a-vis the mortgage fraud allegations.
Right.
And now we know where it is. And remember, that was the crux of the civil fraud litigation that Letitia James brought as a New York Attorney
Correct.
General that resulted in that verdict that's been challenged on appeal. Another thing I wanted to go back very quickly,
Mhm.
if you don't mind, is in the 16-page PDF that came out February 18th, 2017. Jeffrey Epstein writes to Roy Black, the late
Yeah.
criminal defense lawyer who
I
just
knew
passed
Roy.
away.
Yeah.
I knew Roy very well. Quote, who will represent Acosta at hearings, meaning Alex Acosta,
Mhm.
concerning his Senate confirmation hearings to be the Secretary of Labor, to which
Right.
Roy said he will be by himself, perhaps a Trump administration aide to assist and accompany him. You recall that Alex Acosta testified in front of House Oversight that, very, very little contact, no contact with the White House, very little,
Right.
very little, very little. Come on.
Yeah.
We all know there was a measure of vetting and prep and shit going on.
That
And the
I've been to that rodeo. I've helped vet cabinet and sub-cabinet and judicial appointees inside government. There is never like, "Oh, yeah, that guy seems good. Let's put him up." They
Rick,
dig. They go through.
why would Jeffrey Epstein care about somebody being nominated for the Secretary of fucking Labor
Right.
unless he knew that there was perhaps something there that might come out, in the
Mhm.
midst of the questioning? The level of incest that's going on with this group is disgusting. The level of conspiracy going on in this group is
Yeah.
disgusting. But the true stupidity is, did you really think it was never going to see the light of day? It may take a long time. What is it? The wheels of justice grind slowly, but you
Slow,
know
but
what? They
fine.
still
Yep.
fucking do it.
They
And the fact that
grind.
did they not think this shit was going to come out eventually? Please
Yeah,
spare me.
that's the craziest part is although this stuff is now 20 years old,
Mm,
it still has the capacity to shock the senses. So has the capacity where you read these things and you're like, I mean, and God knows I've interviewed the 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 Jeffrey family members, and I've
mm,
interviewed, Amy Waller, who
mm,
wrote the book about Oh, Nobody's Girl, and it was wrenching. And I'm thinking, yeah, this was happening back in the 2000s, but yet
mm.
it feels so current and present because if you're a parent, you think, "If that was my little girl, what would I feel and do?" You'd lose your damn mind. And these people, hundreds and potentially thousands of victims of Epstein and Maxwell are out there in the wind, and they're all thinking, "What the fuck is my government doing covering all this up to protect Donald Trump?"
Well, it is a story about money, wealth, power, means influence, right?
Yep,
One. But two, Epstein and Maxwell didn't do this in a vacuum. They had
correct.
assistants to be able to do this. They
They
paid for
had
the assistants.
they
They
had
paid to
drivers and
cover up.
assistants and lawyers and doctors and every other
But
goddamn
there were
thing.
other people that were complicit in the trafficking and in the partaking of the sexual abuse. Number one.
Yep,
Number two, the thing that bothers
yep,
me is the victims and survivors of Epstein, Maxwell, and others, and I always emphasize Rick the and others because that was the whole point of this.
yeah,
Jamie Raskin just last week sent a letter to Pamela Joe at the DOJ stating why, after Donald Trump was sworn in January of 2025, did the Southern District of New York stop its investigation into any potential co-conspirators of Epstein and Maxwell, and the file was transferred from New York to Washington, D.C. Main Justice. After
mhm.
which, in July, we had that bullshit declaration in a memo, quote, "There's nothing credible here about third parties to continue to look at and prosecute." Obviously, the cover up, right? We're not dumb. We know
This is
exactly what is happening here.
this is the largest cover-up in modern government history, folks, and I mean above and beyond Watergate. Because it covers so many more victims, so much more harm, and such a more and look, I'm not saying that breaking into the Democratic Party headquarters is a good idea or whatever, but I am saying that was stuff that was you could look at it and squint and say, "Ah, it's politics bullshit." This is rape of underage girls.
Yes,
This is
child rape.
trafficking. This is child rape. This is child rape. This is trafficking of children and adult women. This is ongoing sexual abuse at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and a whole bunch of rich guys that they were friends with. And it
I
just
want to
it's unexcusable.
I want to make sure something's very clear here. The victims and survivors of Epstein, Maxwell, and others have been failed grossly by the
Grotesquely.
system. Not only have it's been documented that the Victims Crime Rights Act has been violated, or the Crime
Yes.
Victims Rights Act, excuse me,
Right,
has
right.
been violated for them, and it was designed to protect them. But the abuse is ongoing. And the reason why I say that, Rick, is although maybe the physical abuse has stopped, how is this not emotionally abusive? To
Oh,
have
it's
Have
terrifying.
Alex Acosta sit there and say, "Well, the credibility was suspect, so we didn't move forward, even though we had a multi-count indictment prepared to be able to move forward federally." You know what? I'm a Republican in Congress, but I don't need to really meet or listen to the victims and survivors of Epstein because this is just a
Yeah.
Democratic hoax. The abuse is ongoing. It is the biggest insult and slap in the face of these poor
Yes.
victims. So, at the very least, the Americans should be able to judge for themselves whether they want to be complicit themselves in continuing to allow somebody who has this bears fruit. Donald Trump has committed impeachable offenses for which he
No
has
question.
zero fitness for office. And Americans should say to their electeds, you need to get him the fuck out of office. Now, you and I need to have a whole other conversation about JD Vance
That's a
becoming president. That's a whole other thing. But in the meantime, I'm just saying that what this guy has done is impeachable.
and I think the other area where it's impeachable is in the actions of Bondi, Patel, Bongino, and Blanche. They
Oh,
have been
yeah.
engaged in a criminal activity. They are in a criminal cover up right now. They are suborning her perjury to protect Donald Trump. They are they are engaged in something that is truly monstrous. And I think you know, I don't want to waste a lot of time on Donald Trump if he's not going to be actually convicted, but I want to drag Pamela Bondi and I want to drag Todd Blanche and Dan Bongino and Cash Patel over hot coals and broken glass for 1,000 years because they know what they're doing to these young women. They know what they're doing to them.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about how critical it is for accountability to actually have a face and to
Yep.
actually have a moment, which is why getting us back into the levers of power positions to be able to have accountability hearings for all of it, for the Ed
Yep.
Martins, the Pamela Joes, the Cash
Oh,
Patel, the Todd Blanches, the Emil Bovies,
oh
listen,
yes.
the Greg Bovinos, you
The
name it,
Janine Pirros,
the
all of
Janine
them.
Pirros, the Lindsay Halligans, the Lena Habas, I could go on and on. Horrifically, as a member of the bar, they are members of the bar, almost
Right.
all of them, right? They are lawyers that should know better. I have called them the enablers. I have called them the enablers for years, since
Yep.
Trump term 1.0. And really, the funny thing is, and I spoke about this morning, they're so dumb that they haven't figured out that with somebody like Trump, transactional loyalty is the name of the game.
Yeah.
And when Trump figures out that his ass is high and dry and left to be hanged, he's not going to be worried about bringing their asses down with him as well, right? So
No,
it's
he's
like
gonna say, "I had
everybody's got
no
to find a
idea Pam
conscience,
Bondi was doing this. I had no idea."
right?
He
Like,
will
what are you
he will
talking about?
It's almost as if everything Trump touches dies.
Oh, you think so? Rick, what a
Oh,
concept.
oh
No,
my
but look,
god.
these are the moments that we have to actually state, and I always look for these moments because I've been frustrated since Sunday's vote. Um,
Sure.
this is when you appreciate process and rule of law, and what I
Mhm.
mean by that is a congressional subpoena was served on the Epstein estate. The Epstein estate has given us the birthday book. The Epstein estate has given us financials. The Epstein estate has now given us these emails. Somebody figured out at the Epstein estate that compliance with a congressional subpoena is the lawful thing to do, unlike
Right.
Pamela Joe at the DOJ, who also got a lawfully served congressional subpoena and has given it the big middle finger. I'm just grateful that the process exists, even in a place where we are not in the majority to be able to control outcomes. At least we get this small measure of transparency and accountability.
Exactly. Well, Katie Phang, I wanna thank you for coming on the show today. I'm sorry my voice is so raw, folks.
Oh, mine's
We will
getting all
have
messed
you
up too.
we will have you back again very soon, my friend. This was such a good conversation. I love you, appreciate you, and, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks for
Thanks,
tuning in. See
everyone.
you again.